COVID-19 vaccines so that the spread of the virus can be reduced and be eradicated among us. Mr. Speaker, this budget is indeed the pathway to recovery. Everyone has the right and will benefit from this country, from whatever this country has to offer, not a selective few who enjoyed the good life during the past few years while the multitude dreamt of it. The people of this country will never forget those 5 years when this august House was used to impose hundreds of draconian taxes to bleed the pockets of our people. Sir, this is a new era. This House will be used by the PPP civic government to right the many wrongs that were done to our people. This House, one by one, sir, will reverse those draconian taxes to ease the hardships on our people. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2021 captioned a pathway to recovery, economic dynamism and resilience is a strategy to intensify the developmental pace started by Budget 2020, fulfilling our manifesto promises to our people. Mr. Speaker, let's not forget that more than half of the 2020 budgetary allocations were used to pay back monies that was squandered by APNU AFC without parliamentary oversight. Monies that could have been used to improve the well-being of our people in this COVID environment. Yes, Mr. Speaker, our government were able to give $25,000 COVID cash grant to household. And yes, my friends, the pink slip means liquid cash, which will be distributed in the immediate future. Mr. Speaker, the PPP civic government was also able to give 2 weeks' pay to all frontline workers and $25,000 one-off cash payment to all public servants. Mr. Speaker, this budget is an inspiration. It has something for all of us, including public sector workers. Mr. Speaker, according to the Minister of Finance, this budget 2021 will return into the pockets of Guyanese over almost $50 billion in disposable income. The tax relief measures started with the 2020 budget. Remember that VAT was removed from drugs and medical supplies, from school supplies, etc. Remember the cost of the land tax was reversed to prior to 2015 for MMA farmers. Mr. Speaker, it is a known fact that Guyanese were afraid of APNU AFC budgets because it meant more taxes. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2021 has no new tax measures in it. Instead, VAT was removed from several items, and that money will remain in the pockets of women to be used for other needed essentials in their families. Mr. Speaker, our elders are smiling and in full praise for the PPP civic government. Why? 2020 budget gave them $25,000 COVID cash grant, and now they know that 2021 budget measures will further improve their lives and not tax them. Our elders must never be taxed, sir. They paid their dues to society and must live the rest of their lives in dignity in our care. Mr. Speaker, a more efficient and effective healthcare system will be established across Guyana to pay attention to the psychosocial and physiological well-being of our elders. This is to ensure that our elders receive medical treatment in a timely manner and that their nutritional intake is compatible with their medical conditions. Mr. Speaker, our elders welcome the increase in their pensions from $20,500 to $25,000, removal of VAT from water and electricity, restoration of subsidy on water, the removal of VAT from data and internet. And believe me, sir, a lot of our elders are internet savvy, so they welcome that too. Mr. Speaker, I would like to commend the young ministers managing our housing sector. I remember that in 1992, when the PPP got into government, there was nothing regarding housing. And APNU AFC, the majority in that coalition is PNC. They went back there and almost crippled the housing sector. Can you imagine that? They brought the pre-1992 behavior into the 21st century. have been witnessing in the last few months an upsurge in the demand for house lots, and we can feel the positive energy emanating from that sector. Mr. Speaker, more house lots, according to Minister Susan Rodriguez, were allocated in the last 6 months by the PPP civic government than was done by APNU AFC government in 5 years. I have no doubt, sir, that our manifesto promises of 50,000 house lots will be surpassed. Mr. Speaker, house lot distributions create jobs. Jobs put monies in the hands of families, which will immediately improve their conditions of living. How can we forget? The lack of vision, as I said, crippled the housing sector. Mr. Speaker, removal of VAT from construction materials and equipment and increasing the loan ceiling are some of the measures to encourage everyone to become homeowners instead of paying rent. And I am hearing that this budget has nothing for anybody. Mr. Speaker, one of the honorable member from APNU AFC said that there should be a new law to prevent the government from stopping projects. Well, I'm telling you, if such a law existed, then I don't know what would have happened to you for scrapping so many of our macro projects in 2015. Well, if such law existed, Mr. Speaker, then PPP civic government, Mr. Speaker, PPP civic government will never stop any of APNU's project that has benefits to our people and our country. But APNU lacked vision. So what did they do, sir? The first thing they do when they got into government was to scrap the Amila Falls hydro project. What happened with that project, sir? They never considered the benefits to our people or the economy. Their poor judgment caused us to continue suffering from daily blackouts. By now, Mr. Speaker, that project would have ended and we would have all been benefiting from cheap electricity, and we would have not had blackouts today. Mr. Speaker, people out there are saying that APNU AFC cabal, they're so callous. They maliciously, sir, halted the specialty hospital project. Today, that hospital would have been completed and specialized care would have been provided for our people. Our Guyanese brothers and sisters are still traveling overseas for specialized medical care and interventions. This is wrong, sir. And this wrong will be righted by the PPP civic government. Mr. Speaker, rebranding won't change the truth about APNU AFC. Mr. Speaker, expectant mothers have to look forward to a great lot in this budget. For one, a specialized hospital will be built to provide care for both pregnant mothers and their children. On top of this, sir, birthing rooms will be built in several communities across Guyana, and this will immediately reduce the risk of deliveries of our babies. Mr. Speaker, I know that this is a welcome initiative for our women, and we await this with open arms to use the centers to bring the babies and the new little ones into the world to replenish the new generation. And I pray that those new persons that comes into the world don't stay like some of the people in this house. Mr. Speaker, we must never forget the contempt that our sugar workers were treated with by APNU AFC government. After they fired almost 2,000 CSOs from the Amerindian Affairs Ministry in 2015, they went after public servants who they assumed were PPP civic supporters, many of whom were women too. And you fired them without indiscriminately, they were fired. Right? And I don't have the time to call names, but we all know who their names are. They were in the media every single day. If that was not enough, sir, they turned to the sugar workers, as was established yesterday, the day before yesterday, sir, by the Minister of Agriculture. They went against their findings of their own COI and closed the sugar estates and put more than 7,000 workers on the breadline. Mr. Speaker, the financial well-being of more than 10,000 or tens of thousands of people were affected. Sir, When they closed the sugar industry, they never went to those people and offered an alternative. They never find out what those families are going to do to send their children to school, to put food on the table. We know when we studied sociology and psychology, we learned about something named emasculation. You know what happened to those men that because of that, they were committing suicide. We, as a government, APNU AFC was so callous. They emasculated the men who couldn't provide for their own families. How can we be so heartless?
Honorable Member, we are very hearted here to give you an extension, but someone has to move it.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask that the Honourable Member be given 5 minutes to conclude her presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Member.
Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC cabal claimed that sugar is a black hole and a waste of money. Many times in this honorable house, those words were used. Well, I would like to encourage them to read the Western Trial and learn what sugar did for Guyana and Guyanese. But more than that, Mr. Speaker, I would like the honorable members to tell me if the more than $1 billion spent to build Durban Park, if it was not a black hole. Mr. Speaker, let's not forget that the Auditor General report found that $600 million cannot be accounted for. I would like to ask if the $12.5 million that was used to pay rent monthly for the famous drug bond that had nothing almost to do with medical equipments and drugs. Was that not a black hole? I would like to know if the millions spent on the feasibility study for Demerara Harbor Bridge was not a black hole. Mr. Speaker, let's not forget the infamous single sourcing of drugs and medical supplies of $605 million. Yet, there were massive shortages of drugs across Guyana at hospitals and health centers. Can you understand, sir, why they are referred to as the sanctimonious gangsters? They spent more than $1 trillion of our taxpayers' money and has little to show for it. Investing and reinvesting in our people can never be a waste of money, sir. Reversal of taxes is investing in people. Removal of VAT from food and supplies and household items is putting money back into the pockets of our people. Removal of VAT from school items, drugs, and medical supplies is putting money back in the pockets of our people. Removal of tax from agricultural items and mining equipment is putting money back into the pockets of our people. And you say this budget has nothing for people. Sir, indeed, APNU AFC gives public servants several increases in salaries. But, Mr. Speaker, why don't we hear the honorable members speaking about the more than 200 taxes they impose on Guyanese? And those taxes, you give with one hand and you rip it away from the other hand, as I said in a budget presentation some time ago, like a silent thief in the night when you're sleeping, they come and they steal from you. Sir, no amount of rebranding can change this. Reduction of taxes is a sure way to putting more disposable income in the pockets of our people, which will not be taxed. Increased wages and salary definitely will come for our public servants. Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC coalition did not care for the more than 50% of our population who are women. They left us out from their budgets. Mr. Speaker, that injustice, that disrespect, whether out of ignorance or arrogance, is now righted. I say again, Mr. Speaker, Budget 2021 has a lot for our people, including our women. And if I must say, when taxes are reversed and taxes are removed, $50 billion will be in the pockets of women or in the hands of women, which they will take to the shop, to the stores, and put food on the table for their children. Mr. Speaker, steps are now taken, and this is very close to my heart, to whip life back into GWLI, Guyana Women's Leadership Institute. These steps will remove cronyism and partisan politics from this institution and to return it to what it should be, the premier women's institution of the Caribbean. I would like to thank you, Dr. Vindia Prasad, Minister of Human Services, for injecting life into this institution and for using this institution and to take it to the regional level where you can reach women in their hometowns and in their communities and train them to be leaders so that they can take responsibility for their lives and influence decisions that affect their lives. Not use it to train party people across Guyana and leave out some and because they're not supportive of you. Mr. Speaker, we read the news every day. Cases of domestic violence that continue to end in death. The 914 hotline is the first of its kind, one that we must all work to make sure that victims of domestic and gender-based violence can make maximum use of when they need help. Mr. Speaker, domestic violence is our business. It is a human rights violation, and we must all work to stop it in our midst, at home, community, or at work. We must encourage victims to speak out and ask for help. And Mr. Speaker, we must speak out on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves. We must let them know that they are not alone. We must help them. One death by domestic violence is one too much. Let us all practice zero tolerance and stretch our hands for the victims to hold on to. Mr. Speaker, to live in the Guyana we all dream of, we must work hard together to rebuild it, to protect it and hand it over to the next generation. To live in Guyana we dream of, we must work to eradicate COVID from our midst by
Honourable
practicing...
Member, please work to
Yes, sir.
conclude.
I am. Just a minute more, sir.
You had a minute signed 2 minutes ago.
Practicing all restrictions and accept the vaccines as soon as it is made available. We must expose racism. We must work all together to eradicate all forms of discrimination and build a society where we can all live in peace and
Thank you,
harmony.
Honourable Member. Your time is up.
Thank you, sir.
Honourable members, this concludes our business for today. Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move the adjournment of the Assembly to 10 a.m. on Friday, the 26th of February, 2021.
The Assembly now stands adjourned for Friday, 10 a.m., 26th of February.
We are a peaceful people, struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble.